What's going on, guys? Today I'm bringing some different content than what I normally do, and that's barbecue. It's something that I've recently become passionate about, and in this video I'm making some super tender baby back ribs. First off, I start by removing the membrane from the deep or bone side of the ribs. For long smoke times, the membrane helps to hold the rib together better, but it's just not good eating in my opinion, therefore it comes off. Next, I season the ribs with a mixture of kosher salt and ground black pepper, being a little conservative on the amount of salt because I'll be adding more salt along with another seasoning in a little bit. Some might say not to bother seasoning the bone side because it just falls right off, but to me, that only gives me more reason to season the bone side liberally. Then I season the superficial or meat side of the ribs, trying to get an even layer while also trying not to be too heavy on this first seasoning because I'll be adding Meat Church's Holy Voodoo seasoning as well, which I did add liberally to bring out those excellent flavors. Now it's time to fire up the smoker. I start by lighting a charcoal chimney and getting my wood ready. In this case, I use apple to initially get the fire started since it ignites quickly and burns reliably, but for the rest of the cook, I use both post oak and apple. Once the hot coals are ready, I dump them into the firebox, put the grate on top, and set my first piece of apple wood on top. Make sure to allow as much oxygen as possible to the firebox, as this will allow the piece of wood to ignite faster. Here, I'm chopping some cherry wood, and I just want to make a quick recommendation. Budget-friendly traditional backyard offset smokers like the Oklahoma Joe's Highland that I'm using here have some flaws to their design, the biggest being the inlet to the firebox. What I've noticed is that the kiln-dried logs of cherry and post oak are too big and dense for backyard-sized smokers, resulting in the logs having trouble staying lit once the surface of the log has burned. The log struggles to bring in oxygen to remain lit, thus creating tons of smoke. What I found that helps is to chop the logs into smaller pieces like I am doing here to ensure that the log will remain lit. This also helps to create more pieces of wood and maintain temperature better. Whatever you do, do not use the chop saw unless you have to cut your logs into smaller pieces, as it's just a waste of money for blades and very hard on your saw. Do yourself a favor and buy an axe. Now that the fire is going, I like to bring my temperature up to about 250 to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. Starting at a lower temperature is always better, as it's much easier to add more wood to bring the temperature up. I set my ribs as far as I can from the fire, meat side up. Here the ribs have been cooking for about an hour already. I leave the ribs exposed to smoke for 3 hours and then wrap them in foil and let them cook for about another 3 hours. I like to use 2 layers of foil. The initial layer is used to wrap the ribs tightly, and the second layer isn't wrapped as tight but just acts as another layer to prevent those good juices from leaking out. After maintaining the temperature for about 6 hours, it's time to pull the ribs off. Typically what I'll do is set the ribs in the oven with the oven off and let them rest for about an hour before cutting into them, but I couldn't resist this time as the delicious smell of smoked ribs was just overwhelming. As you can see here, the bone side is up, and that's because once I wrap the ribs, I place the meat side down onto the foil. Just an FYI, when you place your ribs meat side down on foil, it's better to use a lubricant like barbecue sauce, as this helps to prevent the rendered fat from sticking to the foil and potentially ruining the beautiful bark and appearance you work so hard to achieve. Check out how easy the bone pulls right out, a sure sign that I have myself some super tender ribs. Now that all the waiting is done, let's give them a try. So I could not contain myself. I had to try a piece already, which I did. They were super tender, super good. Got this the wrong way. Meant to put it like this. So overall, super good bark. And I kind of took a piece off here, that way we could see, and I took a couple of bites already. And so I got this one. Not the best looking rib, but it's still going to taste pretty good. I'm going to try this one on camera. Just falls apart. Just falls apart. Really good. Super salty. Nice and sweet. That Holy Voodoo seasoning from, I believe it was Meat Church. Super good. Nice and juicy.
Excellent. Super tender. Super, super tender. These are some excellent ribs. Super simple. About 6 hours total. 3 hours unwrapped and 3 hours wrapped in foil. Sitting at about 275, somewhere between 250, 275. Kind of coming back down to 250, getting near the end of the cook. Excellent. All right, let's find some people to share this with.